Hi everyone, welcome to this video, created using Gemini Notebook. I've gone through the AI-generated subtitles and updated the proper names to match the Bible. If you notice anything I missed, feel free to leave a comment.
Modern religious discourse often reduces trust in God to a passive state of mind, a cognitive belief, or a comforting phrase used while waiting for a difficult situation to resolve. In the ancient Near East, for a small nation wedged between warring empires, trust functioned as a brutal, active metric of survival. King Hezekiah of Judah holds a unique distinction in the biblical record. Out of every ruler in the history of the Southern Kingdom, he is the only one explicitly awarded the highest commendation for his reliance on the Lord. The Hebrew word for this trust is Batach. It describes active resistance, radical reliance maintained under extreme pressure. Operating in Batach requires abandoning self-reliance. When human strategies fail, this trust anchors downward, shifting the entire weight of survival onto divine character. To understand how Hezekiah earned this reputation, we have to watch him take his faith out of the safety of the temple. His Batach would be forged in 3 real-world crucibles. His first act as king was a calculated shock. He ordered the destruction of the Nehushtan, the ancient bronze serpent crafted by Moses. For centuries, this serpent was a revered holy relic with a history of divine healing. By Hezekiah's time, the people had corrupted it into an idol, treating the object itself as the source of power. In the crucible of tradition, Hezekiah demonstrated that Batach means trusting the living God of the present, even when it requires tearing down the dead, institutionalized relics of the past. That internal reform was immediately tested by an existential external threat. King Sennacherib and the Assyrian war machine invaded Judah, systematically wiping out its fortified cities. This stone relief shows their industrialized military advantage, utilizing advanced archer formations, heavy shields, and engineered siege ramps that devastated the Judean countryside before the army ever reached the capital. Sennacherib successfully cornered the Judean king. On the Taylor cylinder, the Assyrian king boasts of his progress, writing that he trapped Hezekiah inside Jerusalem like a bird in a cage. He tried a pragmatic political strategy, stripping gold from the temple doors to pay a massive ransom. It failed. The Assyrian army surrounded the city anyway. At the climax of the siege, the Assyrian commander stood at the city walls and specifically mocked Hezekiah's Batach. He demanded to know who exactly the king was leaning on that gave him the confidence to resist such overwhelming force. Hezekiah's response was a radical departure from military norms. He took the enemy's threat into the temple, laid the message out before God, and prayed, not for his own safety, but for God's reputation to be vindicated among the nations. The historical outcome was a total collapse of the siege. A plague devastated the Assyrian camp overnight, forcing Sennacherib to retreat without a single Judean sword being drawn in battle. In the crucible of war, when military pragmatism fails, Batach manifests as an illogical quietness, the ability to stand still and rely entirely on divine intervention. But national triumph was followed by a personal crisis. Hezekiah was struck by a fatal illness, and the prophet Isaiah delivered a blunt message: "Put your house in order, because your life is over." Hezekiah turned his face to the wall and wept, begging God to remember his faithfulness. In response, God granted him 15 additional years of life. To prove the promise, Isaiah offered Hezekiah a choice regarding the shadow on the royal staircase. The shadow could move 10 steps forward or 10 steps backward. Hezekiah rejected the forward movement, noting that a shadow jumping ahead could be a simple trick of the light. He demanded the shadow move backward, and the natural progression of time was reversed as a sign of God's authority. In the Crucible of Mortality, demanding the physically impossible sign proved that Batach means leaning the full weight of your life on the fact that God controls the fabric of the physical universe. However, the historical record takes a sobering turn. Hezekiah's radical trust was a daily decision, not a permanent state of spiritual perfection. Once the crises passed, Babylonian envoys arrived with flattery. In a diplomatic blunder driven by pride, Hezekiah showed off his armories and his wealth, attempting to secure a worldly alliance. He made this choice without consulting God. The consequence was immediate. Isaiah prophesied that everything Hezekiah just showcased would eventually be carried away into Babylonian exile. This failure clarifies the nature of Batach. It is a conscious, moment-by-moment choice to remain dependent. Under the pressure of war and death, Hezekiah relied on God, but in a period of comfort and flattery, he defaulted back to relying on himself. Hezekiah remains a central figure of trust because during the deepest crises of his reign, he chose the unseen God over pragmatic reality. When the pressure hits your own life, what are you actually relying on?
Loved this video? Drop a comment below and be sure to check out the playlist for more like this.